This looks familiar. The Last of Us Part 2 is now out on PS4. It is a game I experienced. It is the sequel to the massively successful The Last of Us. This is the remastered version for PS4. And the sequel takes place 5 years after the events of the first game. You now play as Ellie, and she makes her way across the country to get revenge on somebody who may have caused a tragedy in her life. Just a fair warning, this review may contain minor spoilers for The Last of Us 2 if you haven't played it yet. Also, I will try and do my best to give a level-headed review of The Last of Us 2 in this video. I feel like a lot of reviews are just either saying how bad the game is, they're just reflecting on the leaks without even playing the game and saying that it's automatically bad, or they're just like, it just wasn't what I expected and therefore I hate it. So I'm going to try and give as much criticism and as much positive feedback as I can to this game. Now, let's start with the good of The Last of Us 2, because my god, the graphics are amazing. Holy shit! This is photorealism here, almost, just about. Like, the opening of the game is Joel talking to his brother, Tommy. And just Joel's hair, like the texture, like the color, like the way they're able to mix and match black and gray hair, like especially in the beard, and like just the wrinkles on Joel's face, like just everything when it comes down to the textures, the design of the characters, the design of the human beings, like it's all amazing. This is a visually stunning game, such a beautiful landscape, a well-rounded view of a post-apocalyptic world that feels like it is so well realized and easily feels like that this is a real-life event that actually happened. You actually feel like you are playing a live-action video game. That's what I love about these Naughty Dog video games, like The Last of Us, The Last of Us 2, the Uncharted games. Like, they're just basically live-action movies that you play. It is quite breathtaking. The gameplay itself is very similar to the first game, where you have to go around, kill some infected, namely clickers and runners. You have a few new enemies in this one in terms of zombies, like shamblers. God, I hate those things. Those things like spew up like smoke, and you can just smell how smelly they are through the screen of the TV, and you're not even in the game. Like, you're playing it, and you can just tell how smelly those things are. The stalkers, I hate those things. Those things are freaking annoying. And they add some new zombies, some new monsters to the game. There's also that human element to this game, and I've always thought that that was the strongest aspect of the first game. Not even the zombies just fighting off the human beings. In the first game, I thought that that was always the stronger suit of the first game. It was just more interesting to me. It had more purpose to it. It had more meaning behind it. And I feel like that's the same with this game. But they improve on some aspects of the gameplay from the first one. Like, for instance, in the first game, you could sprint, you could crouch, you could run normally. That was it. This one, you can actually go prone. Like, you have to go prone to get under some stuff, to get from place to place. That's really interesting. You can now carry, like, instead of just carrying ladders and, like, boxes everywhere, you can carry, like, ropes. You have to fling the rope like over the fence or through a window into a next room. That's really interesting. Almost everything in the environment you can interact with. They made it a very interactive game, and I feel more interactive than the first game, which I think is a welcome sight. They also add a new mechanic to combat, which is when you're fighting enemies hand to hand, you can now hit L1 and dodge, and you have to perfectly time those dodges. Here's the thing with the dodges that I really actually liked. It was never frustrating trying to dodge. You would feel like you timed it perfectly, and sometimes you didn't, but then there were times where you timed it perfectly and you fought back. So it was never that thing that was ever frustrating. It felt like you knew how to time it, and then if you didn't, you understand why you didn't time the dodge right. I really thought that that was a welcome aspect to the gameplay. I thought that that was a new and fresh thing that this series needed if it's going to continue after this part. You also have settings when you begin the game where you can have like the indicators as to where the enemies are and if the enemies see you. That always helps me when I play. I know that's kind of copping out, but I I enjoy that part, so you know what direction the enemies are in, what direction they're coming, and then instead of going around trying to figure out where they are, where that last guy is, and running all across the map, everything that they added to the gameplay, that expanded upon the gameplay, just enhanced my experience with this game from the first one. I still think the first one is the superior game, but just adding those little things to the gameplay proved to me that a sequel can be bigger, maybe not necessarily better, but it's what you but for a sequel, it's what you have to do. You can't just stay the same. It's what Batman Arkham City did to Arkham Asylum. It's what the Rise of the Tomb Raider did to Tomb Raider. They expanded upon the predecessor's gameplay without ever feeling like it was a burden. You know? I also really dug the characters in this game. I mean, obviously you have Joel, you have Ellie, you have Tommy, you have Maria. Those are returning characters from the first game. The new characters I thought were really great. Abby is a great character. Enough of this bullshit that, like, she can't have muscles. Like, just fuck off. Like, come on. I thought she was a really great character. It's more in the story and the narrative where this game falters for me. And the characterization of Ellie. As I said at the beginning, this was going to contain mild spoilers. In the first half of the game, you play as Ellie. The second half of the game, you play as Abby, who is the main villain. Now, I understand what Naughty Dog was going for. They wanted to give you a perspective as to where Abby was coming from, what she was dealing with while she was trying to get to Ellie, why she did what she did at the beginning of the game, and they were trying to get you to sympathize with her, to try and get you to see the humanity in her. I understand that. I just don't think, just like the theme of the cycle of violence, how violence affects people and everybody around that person that commits violent acts, I just don't think that that was as well-rounded as it could have been. I get that they're trying to get you to sympathize with the main villain, but, like, when I was playing as Abby, I never felt like that this person could be a main villain, if you know what I mean. I really just didn't see that perspective. And playing as Abby made you realize that maybe Ellie's the villain. And there's a part of the game that kind of hints at that. It really kind of honestly made me question why I even played as Ellie in this game, because Ellie's parts in this game are pretty boring. The first half of the game, I think, is really slow. It takes 2 to 2.5 hours of gameplay to get to the inciting incident. When that happens, Ellie goes on her spree, but it feels like with every big moment with Ellie, it's just followed up with filler. And looking back on it now, most of Ellie's story feels like filler. The second half of the game with Abby is where all the stuff I wanted to happen in the first half of the game actually happened. Like, there's this new faction out there called the Seraphites. They're known as Scars in the game. They're like this evil cult. Disturbing ass shit, but there was like a part in the game where I went through their village and it's burning and I had to escape with Abby's like companion and kill the Seraphites, and it was like, it was disturbing as shit, but it was the most exciting part of the game. Abby had some of the most exciting parts of the game. There's another sequence before that that's really exciting with Abby. There's a lot more intense moments with Abby than there are with Ellie. Ellie is just kind of like, oh, this happened. I want to go kill this bitch. But I gotta go on this whole side quest to open this gate, and I gotta go find gas to let my girlfriend through, and all of that, and let's just hold up in a movie theater. Oh wait, now Abby's here and she's beating the shit out of me. That's basically Ellie's story in this game, and I was just like, it's boring. I was bored playing as Ellie, and I shouldn't be bored playing as Ellie because Ellie was such an integral part of the first game. You played as Ellie for a good chunk of the first game. She was there as you were playing as Joel in the first game. There was that relationship between Joel and Ellie in the first game that was so strong. Even if the story for the first game wasn't as strong as it could have been, it's still a good story, and it's mostly because of that relationship with Joel and Ellie. With Ellie in this game, I just didn't care. Like, she didn't have anything interesting to do. I feel like she didn't progress as a character. Everything she did just felt like time wasted. That's basically what I have to say. I enjoyed playing as Abby more than I enjoyed playing as Ellie, and that's a damn shame because I feel like as integral as a character as Ellie is, I should love to play as Ellie, and Ellie is on the front cover of the game. This is not really Ellie's story, I would say. Like, it's part of her story, but it's really not. I don't know, I didn't get that feeling that Ellie was that great of a character in this game. I feel like she didn't really end up progressing as a character. She's in the same place that she was at the beginning of the game, at the end of the game, and that's mostly because the ending for this game was awful. It just felt very anticlimactic. Not the final cutscenes with Ellie in the game, but it was more the last moments of gameplay where she and Abby actually fight. The most anticlimactic thing ever. With that, it's very hard to explain what actually went on with this game, because this game took 6 years to develop, and I was just thinking to myself, is this really like how they want to treat Ellie? I'm fine with how they did Joel. I'm cool with that. Fine with how they did Abby. But Ellie, it just, again, like, it's just, she makes decisions that make sense, and then at the end of the game, she's so driven by rage and revenge that she doesn't follow through on that, and you're just kind of left like, oh, so that was kind of a waste of time then. I can see how people would think that The Last of Us 2 is a bit of a waste of time. The first half of its story is boring. The second half of the game is great when you play as Abby. That whole theme of like the cycle of violence and how it affects those around us and the person who's committing those acts itself, I think they do try and attempt to answer that, but it's never as well rounded as they think. But like, you can't just say the game is bad based off of all of that. The game is still really good. It just, in certain aspects, like the story, its narrative focus, and how it presents its themes, it could have been better. But I still really had a fun time playing The Last of Us 2. Its gameplay is great, its visuals are great, graphics are amazing, it's a photorealistic game. Most of its characters are really, really good. I liked a lot of the new characters in the game. It's just the story, the narrative, and the presentation of themes just kind of had a polarized response for me. And I'm gonna say I will give The Last of Us Part 2 an 8 out of 10. Just taking everything into account. It's that, I know, people are going to be like, why did you give that such a high grade? Taking everything into account, how well made the game is, how their attempts at trying to present those themes to you are actually in the game, how they do kind of ride that line without fully addressing that topic, but at least an attempt there. I have to give them credit where credit's due. I don't think this was ever going to be as good as the first game. I think people just held this game to way too high of a standard. People looked at the leaks and automatically said it was going to suck. I may do a spoiler-filled review for this. I am not 100% sure yet. I mean, because mostly I just want to talk about some of the things that people are rage tweeting over with this game, like that inciting incident, or something or like Abby and Ellie and all that. You know, I don't know. I mean, but that's honestly my thoughts of the game. I wanted to give it a perfect score, but playing the game, I was just like, there's a few things here that just didn't sit well with me. It's not the greatest game I've ever played. The first one is definitely better, but it's still a really fun game, and I'm glad that they continued this story. I can kind of see where that argument that people think that this should have been the third game is coming from, that it feels like there's a missing chapter. I can kind of understand that, but that's a whole story for another day. So guys, what did you think of The Last of Us 2? Did you enjoy playing it? Did you actually play it? Are you just rage tweeting over it without playing it and automatically saying you're hating it? I don't know. Drop me some feedback in the comment section below. I will leave my link to my website in the description below. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies sometime when they open.